Hello, everyone. Can anyone hear me? Whoa, massive lag. Testing one, two, three. Oh, I know why, because I have to mute my mic over here. Okay, guys, can you hear me? Hi, Amber. Give me a one if you can hear me. I just had to mute my YouTube so I can follow the. We see and hear you. What do you guys think of my new little circular logo? It pushed my graphic skills to the limit, which shows you the extent of my graphic skills. Hello, everyone. Rap View, Too Many Feathers, Veritas, Equitas, Lisa, Undead Arachnid, and a living spider? That's interesting. Hey, everyone. Okay, great. So, welcome to the first Ask Me Anything or AMA. Thank you so much, Gulf Coast Girl. That's very, very generous of you. I'm glad it worked. That's an old redirect I had from a website that I'd never used, but I'm glad I set it up. So I am here this evening to engage with all of you and to address any questions that you might have about anything under the sun. I'm trying a new microphone, so I hope it's working. Hello, Diane. I hope the new mic, it's actually a better mic, but it allows me, I can do this without my hands now, because before I was holding a microphone and, well, that's not very fun. And I think I figured out how to share my screen and get audio to play now, because the last time, oh, VP, thank you so much. Very kind of you. I'm flattered, honored. Um, yeah, so hopefully the mic is working great, and now I'm hands free, but I'm not cat free. Uh, hey, Jamie. Whoa, nice to see you, my friend. I heard you were jamming on the guitar the other night. Someone said that not only were you quite adept at the axe, but that you had a lovely singing voice as well. Maybe we can jam someday online if they can ever figure out how to remove lag. I once tried to jam with somebody in a chat room, and it was a bit of a challenge, but because it was sort of just a straight 8-bar blues or something, it was not too hard because you could sort of try to compensate for the internet lag. Um, so I'm going to try to get good at things like doing this, for example. Haha, I can now hopefully share images, or sorry, comments. So try to remind me. I'm going to try to be good. Yeah, that'd be fun, Jamie. What kind of music do you play, Jamie? I didn't get a chance to hear you, unfortunately. I'll have to go back and listen. Do you have a genre that you like, or is it just a little bit everything like me? Thank you for the super chat. How long have we been waiting to say that here? So let me practice my banners. Haha, I have a banner. Yay. Hey, Mom, I can play banners. I played all kinds. Classic rock, yeah, I'm mostly a classic rock guy myself. I like to play blues too, but definitely classic rock is where I come from. Yeah, maybe Jamie and I will do a duet on a couple of guitars one of these nights. That could be fun. Or even just do a little collaboration, exchange some files, and one of us edit it and put it together. Yeah, that'd be fun. I played in a classic rock band in high school a long time ago, and we did crazy stuff. We were doing Rainbow and Scorpions and all sorts of crazy stuff. I did a Queen song, "It's Late," which is really hard. I don't know, after smoking my whole life, I'm not sure if of course, Johnny Lang's a legend. I'm a huge, Stevie Ray fan when it comes to blues playing. He sort of, he does Hendrix maybe better than Hendrix, or at least cleaner than Hendrix. Nobody's ever Hendrix, but nobody will ever be Hendrix. Welcome back, May. It's past coffee time for me. It's now water. Oh, as I said, I might be hands-free this evening because I have my mic set up, but I'm not cat-free. So I have a cat. She's like 10 now. And she always sort of stayed alone because there's a lot of competition between the other cat, the boy cat, and her. And so she always sort of went off alone. And it always made me feel a little bad because I wanted both of them to, be comfortable together and be with me. And only in the last couple months, suddenly this is the neediest cat I've ever had in my life. She won't leave me for a second. She has to sit on my lap. And if I have to get up, well, I've quit smoking several times, and recently I was really trying to get my voice in order and practicing my singing a lot. And my voice was getting really strong. I had really expanded my range. I felt like, in a way, I was maybe it was some of the best thing I'd ever done. And then, whatever, just I have some stress in my life these days, and I started again like an idiot. So I need to get on that and stop again. So anyway, my cat just, yeah, she won't leave me alone. You have four cats. Holy cow. 27-year-old cat, Barley. Wow. I don't think we've ever had a cat longer than, yeah, look, Mom, no hands. I don't think, but still cat. Look, Mom, cat. I don't think we've ever had a cat longer than 20. 27 is going on world record. I saw the cutest, well, just a very interesting thing. It was recommended to me in YouTube last night. It was a guy that had a seawater tank, fish tank, in his living room, and it had all the filters and everything. And he decided, I guess he's had different sorts of sea animals before, and he decided that he'd never had a lobster. So he went to the store and bought a $37 lobster with both of the claws, you know, um, bound with rubber bands. And he took the lobster home, and it became a pet. And it was actually quite fascinating, and it was sort of sad because the rubber bands had constrained the claws for so long that the lobster, I don't think he figured out if it was a boy or a girl, but the lobster wasn't able to open its big claws. And it was sort of sad, and it was very interesting to watch it in the aquarium. And then after a couple weeks, it started to become started to recuperate, and then the claws started to work. So as an animal lover, I was sort of like, well, that's cool. I mean, he sort of saved a lobster, and I'm sure they might not know they want to live, but I'm pretty sure that they do. And what was interesting was then I was really fascinated with the lifespan, and that they can. Some people in the comments section, of course, people make up stuff, saying 100 years, or that they really don't ever die. The only reason they die is because they need to molt. And I actually did read that that is partially true that they ultimately their exoskeleton sort of implodes and sort of decays, and that's ultimately what gets them. But they don't live to 100. They live to more like 45 to 50. But that guy didn't sound like he was very young, so I think it seems quite likely that that lobster will probably outlive him. So maybe on with the show. Does anybody want to go first with the question? And I will try my best to capture it and throw it up on screen, and then we'll talk about it. Hi, Lynn. Hello, it is what it is. Mr. Rock, sir, welcome and thank you so much. Cats never die. Cats have won the internet. The only thing second to cats is probably the meme, but I think the cat wins far and away. Do I have siblings? Okay, then let me see. Did I do that right? Do I actually have something posted? I won't be able to. I'll try to keep up with any other questions. Um, so, do I have any siblings? No, I am an only child, but I have to basically qualify that. My father and I stopped talking when I moved to Europe, and we did not speak for about 15 years. And I woke up somewhere, I think in the middle of the night. It was after, funny enough, a sort of bad breakup. I think it was provoked by a broken heart, and I was sort of very distraught for a bit after the relationship didn't go the way I wanted it to. And so I was sort of a little confused, and I was talking with a friend, and I said, I just feel a little anxious. This is not normal. I've had relationships end before, but I feel awkward. I was sort of having something maybe similar to what people refer to as anxiety attacks. I couldn't be alone for very long. I needed to talk with somebody, and I couldn't just sit and play my guitar or do all the things I love to do on my own. I needed some sort of external stimulus. In any case, one of my friends said, I don't know, is there some other deep issue that you have that you need to resolve? And it sort of dawned on me, well, I don't have a relationship with my father for about 15 years, and that can't unconsciously probably feel very good. So I woke up sort of in the middle of the night, and I found my father's number in the phone book. I was in Switzerland, and I called him, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and I said, Dad, and he said my name, and we tried again, and he apologized for a lot of things, and I thought that maybe we could start again, maybe a positive relationship. And so I found out at about 37, 38, that despite my entire life having been an only child, my father had since remarried, and he had a new son. So I have a half brother, and he is much younger than me, and I had the opportunity to meet him, and he's absolutely wonderful, very talented, very artistic, plays instruments, and is very theatrical. And so I have a brother, but for all intents and purposes, I don't think it changes anything. I'm pretty sure that I am an only child in the only meaning which is really relevant, which is that in my formative years and my development, I was alone. And I never missed siblings. I never longed for siblings. I never envied loving siblings when I met people that had siblings. I never longed for anything. But of course, I was very interested when I found out, and it was a pleasure to meet him. And him and I are still on very good, positive terms on Facebook. My father and I have since had another falling out. We sort of at this point send each other an annual happy birthday email, and I'm sure he would like to have a relationship with me, but it's sort of my choice again because he just can't behave very well. Maureen, is your question then why I don't talk with my father? Because I'm not afraid to answer that one. Merci, bonsoir à tout le monde. Pour tous ceux qui parlent français, si jamais vous voulez me poser une question en français, ça serait un gros plaisir. So yeah, I wasn't sure if Maureen was asking that question because I would answer it if there's interest. But so yes, what was interesting though from the perspective of my brother was that my father did not tell him about me. So that was a bit shocking. And he apparently had always longed for siblings. And so when he found out about me, he was so excited that he had a brother. And, so I was sort of, that was quite moving and touching that I could suddenly be an older brother after all these years. And he's just a great person. He's gay, and I imagine that my father may not have liked that, but I think that he's older and a bit more mature now because my father was a big athlete and so was I, and he very much lived vicariously through me, hoping that I would achieve his athletic goals. And so he put a bit too much pressure on me. And I was sort of worried when I found out my brother was gay and was not interested in sports because I was afraid maybe my father would hold that against him. But from what I understand, all is good. What do you think? Hold on, that's a Descartes. Okay, now I need to find the Descartes one. Okay, let me think about that. What do you think Descartes meant when he concluded that the body is distinct from the mind? Well, that's essentially called dualism, and there are a few different kinds of dualism. But Descartes was essentially a dualist, so he believed, as many philosophers to this day still believe, that mind is somehow separate or separated from the organism. And I happen to be a monist, so I don't accept that premise. We are, in my humble opinion, a single organism. There's no reason to believe that mind is in any way distinct from simply brain. So we might often use the term mind to refer to what the brain does, sort of in the conscious context. But we are a nervous system. We are a single organism which performs a lot of evolved functions, and the brain is the control center of everything. And so I'm a monist. I don't believe there is any distinction between mind and body, and but it's been a very popular idea across the ages, and it usually reduces down to our fascination with first-person experience, with the notion of consciousness and the sort of what's called the Cartesian theater, this impression that we have. Maybe you've seen my videos where I've referred to homunculi, the homunculus, and I've referenced the Cartesian theater. Wow, Jamie, thank you so much. That's really generous of you. I appreciate that. Yeah, 100 billion neurons, Hope Rocks, and I believe it's 100 trillion neural connections. So it's even more complex than that. But I often refer to the Cartesian theater or the homunculus, and that's this idea that we have this first person experience of feeling like there's somebody inside our head, behind our eyes, and we have the impression that we are sort of talking to ourselves. We have this sort of internal dialogue. So I think that's why we're highly susceptible to this notion of dualism, where we believe there's sort of an essence. Some people refer to it as a soul, a spirit, a mind, somehow distinct from the organism, from the body. But I happen to be a monist. I believe that all of that can be explained by emergent um, evolution, and that the mind and the brain are one, and there is no dichotomy between the brain and the body. They're all part of one holistic system. So hopefully that answered your question, Diana. Diane, sorry. My neural pathways don't pathways. I'm not sure if I missed any other question. Hopefully that's satisfactory. I mean, there are also different forms of dualism, but we can. Hey, no flannel thong. Yeah, I'm not answering that question. That's a question for AK. That's a little weird. I don't swing that way. Jamie. New comments. Commando or undies, Mr. Brain? Um, I'm not answering that question live. I'm not. I'm not telling you. I have sweatpants on, and it's hot. I live in the tropics, so I have the fan on. And maybe someday I'll go on screen, but how old am I? I just turned 55, and I don't feel it because I was playing semi-pro soccer still about 10 years ago. I was playing full court basketball and still faster than the kids. And then both my knees went from just decades of really hard exertion playing competitive sports. And so my knees they're okay now, but I have a torn ACL. Answer Veritas's question. Okay, hold on. Where is it? Where is it? When did I turn 55? November 14th. I can't find Veritas's question. Let me go back. Oh, what do you think about polygraphs and voice stress analysis? Good question. As I said in my video, it's pseudoscience. Um, it, there's a reason why these don't hold up in court. Um, they've been shown in various studies. Ozzy did a really good job in a video, which I would recommend you go take a look at, where she analyzes the voice stress analysis and a particular rather robust study performed by, I believe it was the Pentagon, which found it to be, certainly no better than chance. And the same goes for the polygraph. And there's also the voice stress analysis is mired in, you know, collusion, if not just straight up corruption. They have claimed, the organization that represents and promotes that product, that process, have claimed officially that they have something like a 98% success rate with their technology, and yet when they go into court, they claim that it doesn't work. So when they're held, when they're possibly going to be held on perjury charges and they have to be honest, they admit that it doesn't work at all. And that particular study that they reference, if memory serves, claimed to be peer-reviewed by an independent, legitimate institution. And ultimately, when you look into it, that there was a massive conflict of interest on that study. It was actually performed by somebody who was involved with the company that produces the technology. and it was not even based on the current machine. It was based on a machine that was from the 70s, some a prior prototype. So your skepticism should be raised as soon as you recognize that it doesn't hold up in court because the science just isn't there. And so that's why, in the context of some of the stuff I referred to in my videos about Chris McDonough, you need to understand polygraphs and voice stress analysis as part of the interrogation process. They are used to render someone nervous and uncomfortable. And things like stress levels, is an indication only of stress. Well, I don't know about you, but when I get pulled over by a cop, my stress level is higher. I'm sure I'm showing high levels of cortisol, and you're stressed just by virtue of the environment. And you could easily, double-blind test in a generic environment where people felt at ease, and you should be able to demonstrate quite easily that any of these tests are effective. And I think the evidence should leave you highly skeptical, and I think you should understand both of these tests really is just part of the interrogation methodology, not a science which can um, decide whether someone's lying or not. We just simply don't have the science at this point, and we don't even know from an ontological perspective, from a physiological perspective, exactly what lying even means. Are we? Sometimes we're clearly conscious and we know we're lying, and maybe that's a particular type of pathology, a particular type of brain state with identifiable neurocorrelates that we could actually ultimately map out and know if somebody was consciously lying. But is there a sort of unconscious lying that we can do where we might not even recognize that we're being deceitful? So we don't yet know from the perspective of neuroscience or even just physiology what lying really means from an ontological perspective. So hopefully that answers that question. Um, have I missed any really good questions? I'm sorry, when I'm sort of on a train of thought, I'm afraid to look too closely at the chat room for fear of losing my train of thought. So if I've missed anything good, please, repost or get my attention. We can move on to something else. What do you people who truly believe their? What do you do with people who truly believe their confabulation? Hope Rocks, also a good question. Well, I think, this is where hopefully sort of my role as a, science communicator, and of course, as I'm insignificant in my, footprint in the world, we need, legal scholars and other relevant people in the legal field, as well as just science communicators, to better educate on people, so that, like, for example, because I know, let me try to find, because I know this, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't take a lie detector test because I would be afraid that just under stress, I might, be then considered lying, and then that would, put me in a rather awkward position, and it would give all the power to the interrogators. So I'd be a bit concerned. It's not because I know I wouldn't be telling the truth. It's because I would be concerned about failing a fallible test simply because my stress levels would be high. Um, Allie, or can I try to go back? Let me see if I can try to go back and find Allie's question. Is it this one? Is this the right question? If you are, in fact, you actually have a human form, if you are, in fact, you actually have a human form, will you ever be in that form on your live streams? panels or channels at all. The Scientific Skeptic, why or why not? Very good question. I have revealed myself. Actually, Ozzy has seen me. AK has seen me. Jen, I just shared because I asked her to help me to come up and help me test. Trisha has seen me. Um, our friends, why I don't want to bring up her name because I think she has a different name in real life. I may or may not. I'm still undetermined on that one. Um, I've been anonymous for the last 10 years on my science page, and I think the reason why I did it, for example, I am a bit of a someone in the science and skeptical community on Facebook. I have a very large forum there. I mean, I have 127,000 followers there. So I'm bigger than you, Chris McDonough, and I'm bigger than you to all of his little acolytes. So take that if you want to pretend, you know, I'm a no one. I shouldn't even say that stuff. It's silly because who cares how many subscribers? How many subscribers does Kim Kardashian have? It doesn't matter. It should be about the quality of arguments made. They should stand on their own. So the reason why I didn't want my science forum to be, my name, my page, because it's not about me. It was supposed to be an educational forum. So, you know, I set it up because the point of the forum was to discuss science, critical thinking, and skepticism, not to become a cult of personality around me or to post selfies of myself. It's not about me, it's about ideas. And so I sort of feel like the scientific skeptic, I have the same rationale. It shouldn't be about me, and it's certainly not about cowardice. I mean, on SCTS, I have posted images of myself with my mother and with my cat over the years. It's just not about me, and I'd rather it not. I'd rather the ideas stand on their own. And if you disagree with something I say, by all means, refute my arguments, present better arguments. I don't want to be wrong any longer than I need to be. So hopefully that's a satisfactory answer. Uploading, let me see if I can find that one. Um, Scrolling is sort of a pain. Oh, show. Okay, too many feathers. Thank you for the question. Would you consider uploading short vids on the art of debating? Absolutely. I've been, that's a bit very much in my sort of my bread and butter. For the last 10 years, because I teach philosophy, I teach a lot of rhetoric and obviously formal argumentation and formal logic and things like cognitive biases and logical fallacies and how to construct proper syllogisms and how to test syllogisms for soundness and validity and how to test your premises. And so certainly I should be fairly well versed in the art of debating and sort of the intellectual rules of debating. So yeah, sort of hold me to that, too many feathers. If I forget and I just have a lot of projects on my plate and I forget, please come and remind me or even send me an email at my contact address, and I'd be more than happy to try to put something together. This was one of the reasons why when Josh, just Joshin, as I call him, uh, you know, challenged me to a debate on his forum in the jungle with his, sycophants. I explained to him very clearly why I absolutely would not do that. Because, with all due respect, I'm pretty sure that Josh knows nothing about debating. I'm pretty sure that I would never enter into the shark pit, any shark pit, to debate. It would be, I would have to agree to the terms. It would have to be on generic turf. We would have to discuss the debate topic, and I would expect a qualified moderator. And quite frankly, I still wouldn't debate him because I'm pretty sure he would not play by professional and fair intellectual debating rules. And I certainly, because I've seen and watched and participated in hundreds of debates over the years, and I've seen what a debate looks like um, when it's not conducted properly. It's just a alleyway knife fight, and it's not productive. People don't play by the rules. People act in bad faith, and if the crowd is one-sided, um, the one side can simply use, petty games and snark and all sorts of tactics to distract you and to ridicule you, and that's just not how a debate is held. Yeah, I'll have to disagree with you, Andrew. We'll have to disagree on that one. Okay, any other questions? Do you believe true altruism exists? That's a lovely one. Um, I mean, depending upon how far down the rabbit hole you want to go, altruism certainly does exist simply from the perspective of what we know about evolutionary biology. So, as a social animal, and there are other social animals that we now know have consciousness, they have a sense of self. Among social animals, we've identified among several species something which we refer to as reciprocal altruism, which is very well studied and corroborated. I could point you towards all sorts of studies, even videos on YouTube where they show, elephants and monkeys and, sorry, other apes and elephants, and I think some birds, certainly dolphins, I believe even maybe whales. Have a nice night, Jamie. And thank you, Ozzy. I can imagine that message was probably less than positive um, or productive. So now I lost my train of thought. See, that's why I'm afraid to sort of look at the chat room. So when it comes to altruism, we absolutely have the ability to be altruistic. It's sort of in our social nature by the fact that we evolved in small communities, maybe 100 people in a clan, which were all essentially kin, extended family that shared genes, and there is a evolutionary natural selection value from helping and being cooperative with other people in your clan, especially when they're considered kin. The problem that you have in addressing something like altruism in humans is that we have a darker side to our biology. And in sociology, we usually refer to it in the context of in group, out group. You can talk about it in the context of tribalism. And so, to the extent that we perceive that somebody is in our in group, especially, our kin, family, extended family. It's because we evolved in very small communities of maybe 100, and we were all once related, so we shared the same genes, and the unit of evolution is the gene. Um, there was very good biological reasons for cooperating. The problem is that there were tribes on the other side of the mountain, and those other tribes were not kin. They didn't share your genes. They were in competition uh, for successful genes and for territory and for hunting grounds and resources. And so the problem is that if we consider someone out group, then we can vilify them and we can hate them and we can war with them and we can even kill them. And to the extent that we perceive someone as non-kin, non-tribe, extra-tribal, or out-group, we can be the opposite of altruistic. So we're certainly capable of altruism. We're a cooperative animal by nature. Look at some of the huge human projects. Whether it's the Panama Canal or the pyramids or the uh, just massive architecture or any host of large um, group works, you can see just how capable humans are to cooperate and get along, and when they share a common cause, to work together to great ends. So let me get to Kibby. I hope that question was satisfactory. What religion were you raised in, and was there a specific reason you are not religious now? Very good question. Oops, I got a frog caught in my throat. Let me have a drink. So I was not raised in a religion. I was raised in a secular environment. I was not really exposed or even aware of religion until I was a bit older. No, it's not a problem, Ozzy, because I'm not in any way disparaging anybody with religious ideas. I'm fully happy to answer the question. I have to deal with religion all the time. I often let people know that I have no animosity towards people who have religions or are religious. I know a lot of non-religious people who are not necessarily very, very moral or very kind or very thoughtful or very intelligent. And I know some of the most beautiful, most moral, most wonderful people in the world who are religious. So, I judge people by their behavior, not by their private beliefs. I tend to, only really address beliefs once they become operative in the world, in our society, and tend to evaluate ideas from a sort of harm principle perspective, that I think beliefs that are put out into the public that can reasonably be expected to cause harm um, in a free and open society, we should be able to challenge. And private beliefs are private and should be respected. So I hope that answers your question. And is there a specific reason you are not religious now? The reason I'm not religious now is I was never exposed to religion. And as a scientist and a scientific skeptic, I've just not been convinced at this point why I should be or why I should accept. So I see religious claims as no different from any other truth claim. So what I require in order to accept a belief or to take it on board intellectually is simply to be convinced with good reason and evidence. And I would like to believe that I will reject and change any beliefs I have that don't hold up under scrutiny, and that I will take on board new beliefs to the extent that they've met their burden of proof, and I've been convinced that they're compelling. So I hope that answers the question. I hope I certainly didn't offend anyone. I'm very transparent. I have really nothing to hide. My private beliefs are public, so now does that make my private to be public? AK, get your privates out of the chat room, please. Is there, is that a good one? Let me see. Oops. May, question, is there a genetic element to critical thinking skills? My formal education ended when I was 15, and I don't recall being taught a lot of what you talk on, but recognize it in my thought process. Well, that actually touches on a very, very controversial topic, which is almost, there are very few topics that I consider taboo that I'm not um, um, willing to talk about. But the conversation about human intelligence from a nature-nurture perspective may be at the top of that taboo topic, and it's been very contemporary lately. So, I mean, I would be willing to talk about it, but I think rather than address that very complex topic, which I do know a thing or two about, I think I'm going to discuss your question from the pure perspective of critical thinking. Um, Absolutely, May. At any time, I'd be more than happy to have a detailed discussion. It's a fascinating topic, and I think it's an important one. And I don't think it should be offensive, and I don't think it needs to be controversial, but it is, regardless. So, on the question of critical thinking, I have absolutely no doubt, and the evidence supports me as well as just my anecdotal experience. The brain is like a muscle. If you use it, uh, it gets better at reasoning, especially if you have taught it how to reason. So if you study formal reasoning and formal logic, and you read a lot, and you exercise your brain, and you challenge your brain, and you reflect a lot, and you engage with other people that are very good at critical thinking, you absolutely, without a doubt, can improve your critical thinking. And so that's the very good news. And then my proposal is that, given that the internet now is a very dangerous place for people in terms of our sort of inability to be able to easily differentiate between good and bad information, I really think we need to promote the idea that our children, as early as possible, and in the education curriculum, critical thinking, and teaching people how to evaluate sources of information, what evidence is, a sort of hierarchy of evidence going from high quality evidence to low quality evidence. I think our kids need to learn these things as soon as possible, because they're going to be exposed to the world we're in. And it seems to me that most of us are not well equipped on this front and can't seem to tell the difference, and it's not obvious. So hopefully that answers your question. Ali, why the jump into YouTube? What's the experience been like so far? As expected, any surprises? What are you setting out to do? Mission? Any goals? Can we help? Great question. Thank you so much. Actually, all of the questions have been great. Thank you to everyone. Um, they're a lot better than I was. I mean, they're better than I could have hoped for. Um, so I came to YouTube for one and only one reason. I've been teaching moral philosophy for a decade, um, and I have a background in international law. One of my master's degrees has a specialization in international law, and I began my academic career as a political scientist and an economist, and did a lot of work in international law. So I certainly have experience, reading legal literature, even providing research for proposed law. Now, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm not an attorney. I know a lot of political philosophy in the context of the U.S., but I certainly don't consider myself anything like an expert on American law or constitutional law. But I have a fairly good uh, foundation on which I write about it from the political philosophy perspective and from the moral philosophy perspective. And I had taken on an interest in the Lori Vallow case, and I had always liked true crime just as an observer. And so I came to YouTube and I started watching Lori Vallow. I was fascinated from a sociological and group psychological perspective. And um, I then, while looking for more detail on the case, because I was just ravenous, I wanted to learn more about that Vallow case. I then somehow found myself uh, noticing smaller YouTube channels in this true crime space. I started noticing a subculture of YouTube true crime, and I noticed some rather alarming things that went against, my understanding of traditional ethics in a civil society, and some bad moral philosophy and some very irresponsible behavior in terms of covering very delicate topics like true crime, especially in ongoing cases, in a way that I considered not only irresponsible and even immoral, but also just the obvious lack of competence for the people that were jumping into what I would call a bandwagon effect. So I started writing about the issue on my science and philosophy forum, and I happened to have at some point caught the interview room, and I had been watching the content, and I saw the nomadic trek case roll out in real time. And the first night that he started reading the tea leaves and implying that a completely anonymous Twitter user was Brian Laundrie and the most wanted man in America, and I saw how he did it and how irresponsible he was at doing it, um, I found it so loathsome and so dangerous, especially with his clout, his credibility, and the size of his audience and the devotion of his audience, that I felt compelled to come to where it was occurring. And I had already set up my YouTube channel years back because I had intended to sort of continue my science and philosophy project, but maybe in YouTube podcast. And so then the next day when I watched him create that fabricated confirmation video and then posting tweets saying, Brian, we're coming to get you. I know it's you. We have the proof. The three-letter agencies are coming to get you. And I saw how, the feverish pitch of his sort of cult loyalists. And I just knew that the potential for great harm was possibly imminent, that he was likely going to be doxxed, and that some very bad things could happen. And so I felt compelled morally, and I thought that I had the skills to take it on. And that's why I came to YouTube. And that's the only reason I came to YouTube. And after making a few videos, some people seemed to like it. And it allowed me a different sort of creativity level. I started playing with storytelling and being able to write some fun parodies. And so then, because I got positive feedback, I decided to stay and indulge a different creative part of me that I hadn't used, and the ability to use my voice instead of to write. And yes, it's fairly much as expected. I've been very worried about the sort of behind the scenes politics. I am concerned that I, put myself at a certain risk, but, that was sort of true when I did it on Facebook. I'm sort of willing to take the risk. While I am in love and I have a girlfriend, she's currently not here, and I don't have any children. So I'm willing to take the risk individually. Maybe I'd feel differently if I had a family here with children. And what am I setting out to do? Any surprises? Actually, one of the surprises is how gracious you have all been. I've been just shocked at how little trolling I've experienced, and how thoughtful and gracious and supportive you've all been. I've on Facebook, I'm just sort of used to being attacked and insulted and trolled. And so the surprise is that I remember thinking that the YouTube comment section was just a human sewer, and I thought it was worse than Facebook. And maybe things have changed over the years, but that hasn't been my impression at all. I mean, there's been a few, but thank you for sort of restoring a bit of my faith. I mean, you've all been great. As for me, what I want to do, any goals? I'm still a bit surprised because I came in the context of I do ignore you, AK, because you're gonna start making me being comical, and I'm trying to pretend that I'm a brain of that. I know I'm the second half of your comedy shtick, and I love doing that too, but I'm trying to pretend I'm serious. So I don't know necessarily what I want to do, but I do want to maybe ask you a general question. I come from a science and philosophy background. That's sort of my passion, sort of what I maybe do well. But I thought that some of these skills were transferable to maybe helping out in this space, and I got the impression that you guys might appreciate my help in terms of providing a bit of, I don't know, guidance or a sort of framework or maybe some standards to hopefully put some pressure on some of these bad actors and improve the standards and sort of set a tone and be a bit of an oversight thing, and I've just sort of taken on that role. But I'm afraid to scare you all off or alienate you with sort of my stuff, my intellectualism, my science, my philosophy, and I'm just hesitant because I don't know necessarily how you would like to, use me, if I can say it that way. I know some things, and if you think I can be targeted or you'd like me to apply my skills to something that you think is value added, then I'm open to ideas. I'm not really sure which direction I'm going to go. Just to say that I'm a bit hesitant to take you in directions which are, strictly like my SCTS format. Um, maybe it can become something else, and maybe we can work together and target all of our energies towards something positive. I mean, that's why I started. I volunteered on SCTS a decade ago, and I didn't ask for a penny. I would like to have impact somewhere in the world, and I imagine that some of you would like to do that too. So hopefully I've killed that. I'm sure I've missed a lot of good questions. Anybody want to um, remind me of a good question that you saw, or if I need to go back? I'm sorry if I can't keep up. We are trying. We just trying to Christmas mode for now. 2021. It is a strange year, that's for sure. So what have I missed? I'm sure I missed a bunch of good questions, right? I'm sure I talked too long on that topic, but it's very near and dear to my heart. So thank you so much for asking why I came and what I'm doing here. Thank you. It is what it is. I appreciate that. What do you think of the dyslexic brain? That's, that's a bit, I like to consider myself fairly scientifically literate across the sciences, at a low level, so a fairly broad knowledge. I certainly know what dyslexia is, and I often can at least represent some of the, consensus science in certain areas. I think I need to pass on what I think of the dyslexic brain because I don't think I know the condition quite well enough to know, for example, if there might have been a natural selection value, which is why something like dyslexia persists with a certain regularity in our genome. Um, but I think I probably shouldn't address it because I don't think I'd need to defer to an expert in dyslexia. But there may very well be, for example, a natural selection value from the dyslectic capability, if you want. I mean, we can look at it as a handicap, but we can also look at it like there, may be some selection value, which is why maybe it persists and it doesn't just simply become regressive and disappear in our genome. Yeah, I mean, a lot of famous people. There are a lot of conditions that I think it's very hard to put our finger on. When there are qualities that human qualities or human, I mean, if you want to call this a handicap or a condition or a syndrome, there's like, for example, um, um, I forget if it's Tay-Sachs um, or um, what's the other condition that tends to be uh, of a higher prevalence in the African um, genetic lineage. Um, I forget, but Tay-Sachs, for example, is more highly correlated with people uh, who have the Ashkenazi genetic background, and so some of these that are now considered conditions or even diseases ultimately may have come uh, were an evolutionary response to a particular environmental stimulus. So I forget which one it is, and excuse me, I do have a bad memory. But might be Tay-Sachs, that essentially was a evolutionary response, possibly to what's the what's the disease that you get from mosquitoes? Malaria. So some of these genetic um, um, proclivities in particular ethnic groups, basically what we refer to sort of as clads, may very much have been the result of environmental stressors. So in this case, possibly something like malaria, where it was a sort of immune response, which then carried some sort of natural selection value and then propagated, through our evolved sickle cell. Thank you, Kibby. That's the one that I was thinking about. That's the one I mean, not Tay-Sachs. Thank you very much, Kibby. Sickle cell anemia is prevalent among people that have a stronger direct African um, lineage. Tay-Sachs, I think we call these clads now, or ethnicities. So the same thing might be true for something like dyslexia, but I'm just not qualified to speak on it, so I'd really just be ignorant and just sort of talking generally. Yeah, I mean, sugar magnolia. Another one, of course, is autism. What is autism? Is does autism is fairly, I mean, we've only recently began to recognize it and to diagnose it, which, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that, autism is on the rise, and people ignore, and then they think there are environmental stressors or chemicals that are, um, responsible. And I think the best evidence suggests more that the increase in incidence is because we've just gotten better at diagnosing it. But is there a natural selection explanation somewhere behind autism, for example? I mean, we don't know. So again, have I missed other good questions? Please let me know if you thought you saw something that was really good that we could talk about that I missed. Okay, Ali. Thank you, love. Context. What's been overall big picture vision with forum work, etc.? Teach critical thinking in a way so it becomes default mode. The scientific skeptic, and what's your why? I think I sort of explained the why before in the context of why I came to YouTube. Unless your question is simply critical thinking, um, my I began this project because I was concerned about a lot of uh, bad sociological indicators in our society, in the West in general, and in America acutely and particularly. I moved back to the U.S., after 20 years in Europe, and it seemed I wrote a long essay about it. It's even in my About Me, if you'd like to know a bit more. Um, I was sort of seeing some, polls on a growing political divide. I was seeing increasing distrust in the scientific literature on, general trust in the courts, in the police, in the universities, in Congress. At all levels, there was just an increasing distrust of institutions across the board. A lot of it, I think, has to do with the internet and the propagation of misinformation. A lot of it, I think, comes from maybe the insecurity, which was the consequence of 9/11. I think it sort of popped a bubble in our collective psyche, a sort of perceived security that was sort of damaged. And we know, just from a historical perspective, that in times of uncertainty, society can be under pressure. Individuals and groups of people can begin, increase scapegoating and insecurity and anxiety and feel a heightened sense of insecurity. And so I worried about it. And so I wanted to sort of throw my hat into the game to see if I could teach some basic, scientific reasoning and formal logic to help people better evaluate how to help people better evaluate information on the internet, also how to evaluate information in the media, how to evaluate, how to translate and interpret what politicians are saying and what they're meaning. So, if you want to understand politics, as I always say, you can't a politician is not going to teach you anything about the world. In the same way that the media, the news, is really not going to teach you much about the world. You need to learn about the world elsewhere by reading books and education and autodidactism. Teaching yourself about complex topics and trying to understand how systems work and science and formal reasoning. And so, for example, politics, I always say you can't learn anything from a politician. The only thing that you can learn about a politician is the state of affairs in contemporary politics. So they're not going to teach you much about moral philosophy or science or necessarily even about what are good policies. They are a particular type of actor, and you just need to understand sort of what they do. It is a profession, and it's a very interesting and unique sort of profession. And the same thing with the news. You have to understand them as a for-profit business, and to the extent that they're performing their professional jobs, like in any profession, they should have certain standards and have certain vested interests, even purely from a selfish perspective, to do their job well and uphold the ethics for their particular profession. But as we know, the media has also been exposed because of a lot of competition from alternative media and going to a 24-hour cycle, and as soon as cable emerged, and then needing to compete with these all from internet sites and bloggers and YouTube and all sorts of things, they've had to sort of adopt different rhetorical approaches, add some more entertainment, make sure that because they lost their print business and their cash cow of sort of having a monopoly over the news, they've had to change their way. There's still a lot of very good, high quality news out there, but there's also a lot of, just entertainment. And, that's why I try to teach critical thinking and skepticism, hoping that I can at least have some small impact on your ability to discern between good information and bad information. That's my goal. That's my mission. Hope that answers your question. Do I have core values? Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question, too. Uh, um, Ethics around paywalls blocking universal access to proper news. Well, it's for profit. So the problem with making it universal, I mean, if it's state-run media, it should be. But no, I mean, I don't have any real strong argument against high-quality corporations requiring compensation for high-quality journalism. It's inconvenient because we're so used to getting free content on the internet, but no, not necessarily. So, and of course, I know Peter Boghossian. I've actually interacted with Boghossian. I've read street epistemology. I've sort of been teaching my own version of street epistemology, before Boghossian. It's essentially just sort of a modern take on the Socratic method. I like Boghossian, but I think he overestimates the effectiveness of his particular rhetorical approach to changing minds. I have a lot of experience trying to change minds as well, and there's a lot of scientific evidence on persuasion. And I've found that there are many different ways to change a mind, um, and there's evidence supporting all of them. There are better ways and worse ways. my general impression is that you're very unlikely to ever change a mind in real time. Very often, when I have seen minds change in real time, I try to not take any credit for it because I'm pretty sure that you might just have been present when the proverbial straw on the camel's back, um, happened, and it might not necessarily be simply because you were just so smart and so good at rhetoric that you just posed the perfect argument and sort of forced someone to have to reconsider their opinion and changed it. I find that people, for the most part, are probably already on the pathway to change, and you just might be present at the moment that it happens. Normally when you're trying to influence people, your your expectation is that maybe you can influence somebody who's still open-minded and maybe on the fence, who's listening and can recognize the difference between better and worse arguments, and hopefully you can influence them. But the expectation that you can change somebody's mind who really has a dyed-in-the-wool irrational belief, for example, that's really not very well supported, the probability that you're going to just provide him with great reason and strong arguments and get them to change their view is probably highly unlikely. It does happen. It's just rare, and there are many different ways to do it. So I think now on Ali's point, do you have core values? How did you create them, and what are they? How do you stay aligned with them? Great question. I consider myself a moral realist. I've spent a lot of time developing my philosophy. My sort of personal aspiration is to eventually, have just a far more comprehensive and internally coherent um, philosophy, so that when I'm reasoning on one particular topic, it's consistent with the reasoning that I do on any other topic, and that I don't notice that my beliefs, too many of my beliefs, are essentially, internally contradicting or even internally incoherent based on my values. So I try to, reconcile when I find myself in contradictions. We are all capable of contradicting ourselves. We're actually, there's a lot of science supporting the idea that we can hold many conflicting and contradictory positions because we're not really a rational animal. We're more a socially rational animal, not an intellectually rational animal. So my core values are based on, my philosophy is as a realist. So I'm a epistemological realist, an ontological realist, and a moral realist. I think I happen to consider relativism to be one of the most dangerous um, positions. There are good reasons why relativism exists, and there are even some good reasons for it. But I don't think it's a sound philosophy, and I think it can cause a lot of harm. I think there are better answers and worse answers for how to create healthy individuals and healthy societies. And I think that science and reason is how we go about parsing between good ideas and bad ideas, and good values and bad values. And ultimately, at the end of the day, um, it relates to things like the harm principle and trying to understand the ultimate consequences of certain types of behavior, certain types of values, certain types of societal norms, certain types of legal systems, um, things like that. So hopefully that's a fairly superficial, even if a little long, because talking about moral philosophy is a huge topic. Relativism is, there are a few different forms of relativism, but relativism is essentially, depending upon how you're talking about it, either the belief that there are no moral truths, there are even possibly no ontological truths about the universe, that the universe is essentially, um, based on subjective experience, that we can either never hope to acquire knowledge itself or truth, or rather that we can't speak about anything like morality from an objective perspective. There is simply um, morality from the perspective of individual truths, group truths, cultural truths, and they change over time. I don't happen to find it very compelling. So that is why I am a moral realist, but I'm not a very strong moral realist in the sense that some of the answers are quite easy. You can use reason and sound evidence, and I think come to a pretty good moral position. It also doesn't exclude the possibility for exceptions. So you can have good rules. Like one of the obvious examples is that we tend to all agree that lying is bad, um, objectively bad. But then there are exceptions to that rather good rule. So, for example, if you are in 1942 Nazi Germany and you're hiding your Jewish neighbors in the basement to keep them from being sent off to extermination camps, if the SS bangs on your door and asks if you have a family of Jews living in your basement, the only moral um, position to hold in that context would be to lie. And I sort of challenge anyone to rebut that reasoning. So hopefully I've discussed sort of general relativism, a couple different ways to discuss it. Most people are moral relativists, but I happen to believe personally that I think we're all moral realists. I think that we all think there are right answers. We just happen to think that ours are better than others. And I think that it's only really when we're challenged that then we all become relativists and say, well, whatever, I don't know, it's just your opinion against mine. But I tend to think that inside, I think a lot more of us are realists than we admit. So, other questions? Thanks, Ozzy, for keeping people on track. I imagine it can't be easy. I hope my answers are not too long, or they're clear, or I'm addressing the topics adequately. I hope I'm not missing too many good questions. Some questions just, I think, deserve a certain amount of time to sort of give a half decent summary. Do I have any tattoos? I absolutely am a tattoo virgin. I do not. I used to have my ear pierced, and my mother pierced my ear on a cruise ship once. And I had, like a little diamond actually, because I have green eyes, I used to wear a emerald stud in my left ear, and I wore it from about 13 until even into my corporate career in my suit and tie. And at some point, I took it out because I just, maybe it's a bit of a sellout, but it was the beginning of my career, and I just decided, if I'm not going to get a promotion because I have an earring, then I'd rather have the promotion. Fave band. Well, that's a good one. I mean, I'm a classic rocker, but um, I like a lot of new bands. I found a crazy band recently that I've become really interested in. I'm even willing. Oh, I can't share it because I'll get a band called Steam Powered Giraffes. I wouldn't say they're my favorite band, but there's a song called Honeybee that you guys should all watch. They started out as mimes, and it's just a beautiful song, very unexpected. They wear makeup. They're sort of robot meme people. But as far as bands, I mean, when I was a kid, my first big bands were Queen and Styx and Rush and Led Zeppelin and The Who, and then in the modern day, it was, yeah. I mean, my musical tastes these days are so eclectic. I like more and more pop. I like. I mean, I'll still always love rock. Like, for example, I sing, But just for myself, I try to record some songs for posterity. You heard me sing um, "You're a Mean One, Mr. Fish," but I'm a rocker. That was a bit out of my genre because it was a bit more classical style. But my goal before I die is to be able to sing Disturbed's "Sound of Silence." It works very well with my voice. Um, and he's got just an absolutely amazing range. I love Def Leppard. I love Meatloaf. Um, um, yeah, R.I.P. Pert, absolutely Neil. I mean, I saw Rush, I think 3 or 4 times. The best drummer I've ever seen live, without a doubt. Of course, Janis Joplin, Pink Floyd. I used to play a couple Pink Floyd songs in my group. But what was I saying? Damn, I forgot my train of thought. Oh, my sort of life goal at this point is to be able to make a solid recording of Disturbed Sound of Silence, not the Simon and Garfunkel version, but the Disturbed version. And I was really practicing, and I can hit the notes now. I mean, those really high notes really pushed my range, and I didn't have the range when I started, but I can sing it, and I've sung the song, all alone that I felt was recording worthy. But then I will have to, and now I started smoking a couple months ago, and I haven't been practicing, so I'm a little worried, but I don't want to give that up. I definitely would like to be able to pull that one off. Dreamweaver, what the heck? Dreamweaver. Dun 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 dun. I love AC/DC. I mean, of course. Come on. I think I saw AC/DC in concert. Smoking the reefer. I smoked a lot of my adult life. For some reason, the last, I don't know, 5, 6 years, I just I sort of forgot. I don't know why. I haven't had a drink or smoke. I love Aerosmith. I saw Aerosmith in concert too. They're one of my favorites. I think Steven Tyler's rock voice is one of the best rock blues voice. I love the singer from Bad Company. I got to see him actually in Zurich in Switzerland. I also got to see Santana live in Zurich. And I forget the singer. If you guys can remind me of the singer, he's still going strong. Rogers, I think his name is Paul Rogers. He's sung in a couple bands. I think he's got one of the best blues, classic rock voices of all time. Yeah, I was never a huge Van Halen fan. I mean, I was a huge Eddie fan, but I was never a huge David Lee Roth fan. I actually liked Hagar better, and I know there's the Van Halen wars with the sort of purists who like David Lee Roth. I always liked Hagar. He's got that sort of scrunchy rock voice. I think I was also a huge Scorpions fan back in the day. I actually got to meet Klaus and um, was it not Yngwie? That's Malmsteen. The German guitarist. I love Guns N' Roses. As a matter of fact, my college roommate was good friends with the original drummer of Guns N' Roses, and I forget his last name. I should know it, but I think he got kicked out of the band for his heroin addiction. Um, Steve, I want to say Steve something. I was never a huge Mellencamp fan. Bit too poppy. I mean, he has a few. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, sure. I like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. No, but recently I listened to the Scorpions, still going strong. I mean, I can't believe how good Klaus sounds. And I met them on the street in Hollywood, and they signed a napkin or something, and they were so gracious. I think it's the only time I've ever asked for an autograph in my life, and I've met a lot of celebrities coming from Los Angeles. And he gave it to me, and somehow I lost it. Yeah, Steven Adler. Yes, correct. Gary Wright is Dreamweaver. Yes, correct. I remember that song. Wind of Change. I wrote an essay, if you guys are interested, on 30 years after the fall of the wall, and I refer to the Wind of Change song in my essay on political science in terms of the mood that was set in 19 what is it 1991, I believe the wall came down. I always forget if it's 89 or 91. I think it's 91. And The Wind of Change was the song of the ages. Um, got to hang some washing. Okay, you got to go. Jen, are you okay to? Otherwise, I can throw another. Bat Out of Hell is great. I love that album, the Meatloaf album. Yeah, AR. If you go onto my website, which is linked in my video descriptions, and you use the query tool and you type 30 years after the wall, it's a fairly detailed analysis of international relations in the world 30 years after the wall came down, and how, unfortunately, our optimism. I mean, I was working at the UN at that time, and we were very optimistic. And I can't say that our optimism panned out. So I have sort of an account 30 years afterwards, and I have lots of links. Journey, I love Journey. I was so happy when oh my god, I have such a bad damn memory. Steve, the flippin' incredible voice of Journey, he made a comeback, and I was so excited. And he just didn't have the voice that I love. Kansas, I love the Stones, of course. What the heck's Journey's name? It was very pop, but there was a time. Steve Perry. Goodness gracious, what's wrong with me? I love Steve Perry. I just think he's got an absolutely amazing voice, and he recently, came back after like 2, 3 decades. I mean, of course, I love the Eagles. And Steve came out with a new album, and I was so excited. And the first time I heard him, it just wasn't Steve Perry when he was 27, and his voice was different. And it took me a minute, and it sort of made me sad. And then I got used to it, and he sounds amazing. It's just not the same voice. It's an older. The other guy who I think his voice sounds absolutely amazing at his age is Dennis Deyoung from Styx. I recently heard him, and he's looking, a bit tired age-wise, but his voice is crystal clear. It gives me hope that, as I can get older, I can still maybe even still get sing my best songs. I hope. I'm a little worried that I just turned 55. I'd hate the idea that, my voice is just going to deteriorate. But there's a lot of good role models. Yeah, that Asian guy, I think he's Filipino, isn't he? The guy the singer that replaced Perry. I mean, he's a great clone. He's not Steve, but I mean, he's flipping pretty good. Oh my God, I saw Styx down here when I first moved back to the U.S. I saw him, I think, it wasn't REO Speedwagon. It was Hart, and Wilson sounded amazing. I saw who's that blues band that sings She Talks to Angels? I saw them. They weren't so good. Oh, I saw Cheap Trick, and I used to love Cheap Trick, and they didn't sound good at all. But then I've heard them. Maybe it was just a bad day. I love the Cars. I was very sad when Orr died, because I thought he was great. Jay Giles, of course, I remember Jay Giles. Fleetwood Mac, of course. Rumors, one of the best albums of all time. Counting Crows, yes, thank you. Yeah, Willie still sounds. Oh, sorry, yeah, not Counting Crows, Black Crows. Correct, Black Crows. They had a great album, but they really never did anything after that first album. I love Jethro Tull, or some Jethro Tull. I wouldn't say I love all Jethro Tull. I mean, I love Cheap Trick. It's just a time. Also, it's reminiscent of my coming into consciousness. Cheap Trick. I was 13, 14. Sultans of Swing, of course. Knopfler's technique on guitar is absolutely amazing. Metallica, some Metallica I absolutely love. I wouldn't say I'm a total Metallica fan, but they got a they got a vibe that's only theirs, and some of their songs are so powerful, like Nothing Else Matters, and I forget the other one. One. There's another band that I like a lot that I sing some of their songs. Twisted Sister. They're just silly. That's just silly. Nice. Peter Frampton, I think he's still going. I was never a huge Frampton fan when I first moved down here. Whoever the DJ was in this classic Ray had some like, bro love for Frampton because it was like every third song was Frampton live at whatever that album was. Ozzy, yeah, I mean, of course, Crazy Train is a classic. Bon Jovi, I love Bon Jovi. Crazy Train, what's the guitarist that died that played? I mean, it was very sad because he was essentially, is considered, at the cutting edge of guitar virtuosity, and he probably would have become, a legend of guitar. I mean, he's a legend of guitar. Frampton Comes Alive, yeah, or Frampton Alive, I don't remember. Yeah, Frampton, yeah, Rhodes, Randy Rhodes. I've never wanted a flying V or sort of the other flying V shapes. I don't like those shapes. I did have a BC Rich Mockingbird once, but because I'm a lefty, it was a righty, and the sharp edge would stab me in the stomach, stab me in the throat. I wish I had it. My friend actually, I had a red BC Rich Mockingbird that was right-handed, and I ended up giving it to my college, actually my best friend in the world, and he still has it, and he strings it left-handed for me whenever I come, and wait for it, he met Slash, and my guitar now has Slash's signature on it with Slash's design. So that guitar is now probably worth a flippin' fortune, but it no longer belongs to me. But it was my guitar, and my best friend Keith, I gave it to him, and then he got it autographed by Slash. I like some Tupac. I like some Eminem, but I can't say I love Sweet. Absolutely love Sweet. I had a friend who she was like in love with the Bay City Rollers, and every once in a while, like just out of nostalgia, go back and listen to some old Sweet songs or even a Bay City Rollers song or two. I like some of that old glam rock from the 70s. It was before my time, really wasn't my generation. 10cc, I love 10C. I sing a 10cc song with my girlfriend. Tom Schultz is from Boston, isn't he? Freebird, of course. Leonard Skinner. Uh, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, of course. Little Feat, brilliant. So boy, did we go down a different pathway. Now it's all about music. But hey, I love music. Hidden True Crime. Lauren, is that you? I'm so honored you showed up. Good evening. Say hello to John for me. Yeah, I mean, I love that California with Dre and Tupac. California, da da, whatever. I love that song. I also love that My Prerogative song by Bobby Brown. I wasn't a huge Bobby Brown song, but I love that one. I love funk, so I love Cameo. I love funk bass. Do you have a content plan, lesson plan, ideas, or outline we can look forward to? Let me see if I can get us changed back on path. Do you have a content plan, lesson plan, ideas, or outline we can look forward to? Are you planning on doing regular live streams? Well, I've just discovered the live stream, and it's a very interesting and different medium. I haven't mastered the software, but I find it very interesting, the dynamic of engaging with people in real time. I still enjoy making videos, even though my video making skills are still quite rudimentary. I like the storytelling aspect of being able to make videos and to really, take the time to make my arguments, as rock solid as I can and to collect evidence. But I am really considering doing more live streams. There's just something very organic and interactive that brings just an entirely new element to this whole YouTube thing. I don't really have plans or an outline. I have a lot of different projects in mind. I have a lot. I mean, I have a massive database on science on my Facebook forum, with just, pretty much everything from quantum physics to moral philosophy. I cover biology and chemistry, sort of from a philosophy of science perspective. And I obviously have a lot of stuff on formal reasoning and critical thinking and formal logic. And I think that you guys, I think, certainly do appreciate a certain amount of bringing the science and the critical thinking education. I would like my content to be transferable. Like, one of the problems I have with the true crime stuff is that these true crime stories are transient. They can pass quickly, which means that anything you produce doesn't really have a life beyond the current story. So I would like at least a part of my content to be something that's reusable, that we can, that has value over time and not only in a particular context. As far as plans, I proposed an idea to Trisha from Web Sleuth today, that I've been wanting to talk about, and I asked if she would be interested in talking with me about it, and even if she'd be willing to maybe come on my show and talk about it. And she showed, I got a very positive response from her. So we're going to talk later this week. So I'm interested to see what comes from that. So, the opportunity to maybe sort of collaborate or bring on some guests. I'm certainly going to bring on my girlfriend shortly. We already have an icon for her, and she's a doctor, and she's smarter than I am. She's quicker than I am. I'm a pretty good reasoner, but she's raised in a house of scientists and physicists, and so I think she's a bit faster than I think I'll hesitate on that, VP, on the subject until I talk with her about it, and we can ask a question. Noel, please ask anything. So yeah, Lauren, I really respect what Trisha did. I'm glad that word of my work got to her. I'm so proud of her for the courage that she showed. She didn't need to do it, and I think she set the bar, and that's what I was trying. What I came in, Lauren, you remember me because I somehow got in contact with you on YouTube. I followed you. You're one of my good actors. You and John. I hold you up as the standard for professionalism. And you know, I you read my essays before I came to YouTube, so I think you know a bit where I was coming from. And then we haven't spoken since I jumped on YouTube to actually throw my hat in the game and try to figure out how to make videos. But I was so happy that I was able to get, for you to come on to my Facebook forum and to like some of my essays. I was honored and flattered, so thank you for that. So yes, absolutely. Now we have a bar set, and I think the more people that can uh, um, aspire to that standard, and the more channels that get called out for not at least aspiring to be better and more responsible, um, should have to pay some consequences. I think they should get less support. I think they should be more subject to scrutiny. I think that's the way we bring about change in this sort of, yeah, it's just a jungle here. There's too much politics. There's too much opportunism. There is too much, quite frankly, incompetence and lack of ethics. And, we need to promote the good actors and challenge, the bad actors. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, I didn't expect it. When you came to see my essays, I expected to just stay in Facebook land after 10 years. And I had set up my channel a few years ago because the idea was my girlfriend and I, who is a doctor, were going to set up a science and philosophy podcast, very much in the same format as my Facebook and website. And then I ended up sort of bringing my critical thinking and moral philosophy skills and my legal background to YouTube, because there were some disturbing trends that I thought maybe I could help address. What do you think about being anonymous? Yeah, I did address that one before. My rationale for my anonymity is that I don't want it to be about me. It's about ideas. So I try to project certain values and try to promote, science and philosophy literacy, and try to educate on critical thinking and scientific skepticism as sort of as a consumer advocate to help people um, get better at evaluating the bombardment of truth claims on the internet, so that we can get better at figuring out the difference between good and bad information. So that's why I'm anonymous. It's not because I'm afraid to show my face. Several people here have seen me and know who I am. Um, Bullying. Do you think it could increase the bullying? I don't think anonymity necessarily should affect the bullying. I mean, I know that there's sort of a fallacious argument made that somehow the fact that you don't show your face is somehow some sort of sign of dishonesty. And I find that that's a logical fallacy. That's a sort of ad hominem. Usually people use these sorts of arguments when they can't rebut your actual arguments. So it should be about ideas and not people. Um, and so if I make a bad argument, I expect and welcome challenge. I expect to be taken to task if I provide bad evidence or bad reasoning. I want nothing more than you to come back and make a better argument and show all the reasons that my reasoning is poor, or my evidence is not up to date, or not comprehensive enough, or there's conflicting evidence which refutes it. That's, as a scientific skeptic, that's sort of um, my set of rules, is that it's about acting in good faith and trying to, um, have positive conversations where we attempt to find answers, not about who wins in a debate between two individuals or two competing tribes. I'm interested in figuring out how the world works. I've been sort of obsessed with it because I don't want to die more ignorant than I need to be. I'm already too ignorant, and I'd prefer to become less ignorant if possible. Can Brain please explain the double slit? Yeah, I can try. So the dual slit experiment essentially is a very important revelation about quantum behavior. So behavior at the subatomic level, and so this brings up very interesting concepts like wave particle duality. So when we look at the lowest level of nature, behavior the behavior of matter uh, is very different than the behavior of matter that we know in the big world. So in what Richard Dawkins refers to as middle world, the world that we evolved in. And so when we actually have now gone down and been able to investigate and try to understand the quantum world, essentially the level of atoms and subatomic particles, we notice that the behavior is very strange. So, in the simplest of cases, for example, in our world, an object is a distinct thing. It doesn't move around. A rock sits in the same location, except for the consequences of natural events. It really doesn't do anything. It's in a singular location. We can refer to it as a singular rock. But when you go down to the lowest level, when you actually look at what matter is composed of at the smallest level, um, there's some very strange things going on. And we refer to it in the context of things like quantum uncertainty, quantum entanglement, wave particle duality, concepts like this. And then we use an equation called Schrodinger's equation, which allows us to place a probability on where a subatomic particle should be at any point in time, because there are things like superposition where subatomic particles seem to disappear and reappear, and we don't really know where they go when they disappear. There are several theories. For example, there's several interpretations of quantum mechanics. So the Copenhagen, um, which is sort of a very popular one, as well as the many worlds hypothesis. And the dual slit experiment basically shows the what's called the wave particle um, collapse, or the wave collapse. So what we do is we essentially create a sort of vacuum environment where we know there are no other subatomic particles, and we create two different um, slits in a panel with then a background where we then shoot something like an electron from an electron gun at this panel, and then we look at the where the the subatomic particle, the electron in this case, where it lands on the back wall, and we record it. And so then what we find is if we're just shooting electrons through through a couple of holes in a panel, we get a wave pattern. Um, so essentially superposition, where the electron behaves as if it is in more than one place at one time. And then we have what we refer to as the observer effect, which very many people misunderstand, thinking that it's somehow a conscious mind that is the observer. Because when we think of the word observer, we think about it from the context of a human agent, somebody with eyes, somebody with consciousness, somebody with a brain. But that's not what the observer effect describes. The observer effect basically describes how subatomic particles behave when they interact with other particles. And that's the relevance of the dual slit experiment, because what happens is if you put a monitoring device on this experiment where you're shooting electrons out of an electron gun one by one at a back wall through two slits, which shows this wave pattern, that when we add a monitoring device or a reporting device to basically try to take a picture, if you want, of the electron in motion, it causes this very unexpected result, which is called the wave particle collapse, where suddenly the wave pattern that we would expect from a singular electron being shot suddenly sticks to one place. It becomes a unique singular particle. And so that collapse is the collapse of the wave, which is how the particle seems to behave in isolation. And when a subatomic particle interacts with another subatomic particle, they seem to cause each other to collapse and then become a singular subatomic particle again. And the reason for that is that what's happening is when you're trying to essentially monitor it, sort of like taking a picture of it, you're essentially shooting a photon out of that device, a subatomic light particle, and it is the interaction between that photon and the electron, the interaction between more than one subatomic particles, which creates the collapse. So that is the dual slit experiment explained. I hope you find that satisfying. And it's been replicated a million times. So it's not that we don't understand quantum mechanics, it's that we don't, because it's so counterintuitive, we don't know how to interpret it, which is why then theoretical physicists talk about how to properly explain it from a human perspective. And that's why we've come up with the sort of many worlds theory, which I happen to be fond of, which is the idea that maybe when subatomic particles are disappearing and reappearing, maybe they're going somewhere else, like another universe or possibly another dimension. And that maybe we only can experience a particular subset of a larger multiverse or a larger space, and that there are other places to go. Maybe the universe is like a bubble, there are many different. There's string theory, which suggests that it has an explanation, but you have to add, upwards of 10 additional spatial dimensions for the math to work, which would mean that there are, an additional 7 or 8 um, spatial elements that we have no epistemic access to, and that allows us to, you know, satisfy Einstein's eternal wish quest to unite the four forces into one super theory. And the math can be very compelling, but math, as my girlfriend always likes to say, math explains what a universe could be like, but not necessarily the one we live in. So math is not enough. You need empirical evidence, and we have no evidence of strings being the lowest unit of matter. So for the moment, it's still an open debate. We haven't found we found the Higgs boson, which was predicted by the Standard Model, and we're still looking for the elusive um, quantum gravity particle, the graviton. Dark matter is also a misnomer. Um, dark matter, the reason it uses the word dark is because of our ignorance. We don't know what it is, just like dark energy. But simply when we look at the gravitational force emitted by the matter that we know of in the universe, it doesn't explain the behavior. And also the universe is expanding at a rate faster than we anticipate by our laws of physics. So we have predicted that there must be something like an additional energy force, which we refer to as dark energy, which is pulling the universe apart at a faster and faster rate, or expanding out at a faster rate. And then we have dark matter, which is hypothesized as missing matter, which somehow explains how things like galaxies and solar systems stay together and don't just split apart under the force of dark energy. And we can measure it, of course. We just don't know what it is. But that's why we have good reason to believe that these things are real. But the reason we call it dark is to exemplify our ignorance on the topic. Sorry, what caused the expansion? Well, I mean, obviously, the expansion of the universe is just, in alignment with that's what we anticipate from the Big Bang, that the universe is expanding, and it's expanding at a particular rate. But when we actually got better at being able to calculate the rate of expansion, it was expanding faster than we expected. So we have then sort of hypothesized dark energy as the explanation for why the universe is expanding faster than we expected. God did it. I mean, that is a Gilbert bystander. That is a common retort. So, how long have we been going? A couple hours. I mean, if you guys want to keep going, we can go. But I'm still okay. I haven't hurt. I haven't eaten, but I still have a little bit left in me. Do you have any other serious questions? Muons and gluons. One of the things that I find really frustrating is I have a really bad memory, and I sort of envy those who don't. But I've always had a bad memory. My father doesn't have a good memory, so I wonder if maybe I inherited it. But let me see if I can get. One of the things that I find very annoying is that I've learned things that at a point in time, that I thought I had synthesized and I thought I had a good grasp on it and that I could represent and educate on. And then because I haven't covered certain topics for a long time, I'm rusty and I don't find the vocabulary, and it's very frustrating to lose something that you once knew. So, for example, I mean, as a kid, I knew Greek mythology like the back of my hand. I knew all the gods and all the backstories, and now I've forgotten all of that because I haven't used it in so long. Thank you so much, Maureen. That's so generous of you. Very kind. Um, what was the temp in Bethlehem when May's child was born? Um, I don't know what the temperature in Bethlehem was. Entropy sucks. I mean, I think what we're living through right now is social entropy. I think it's a good way to explain what I refer to as post-truth. You know, people think that societies are stable, and they forget that history does not necessarily say that progress is either linear or certain. There are times in history when we regress, and it's a sort of social entropy. So we should, not take things for granted. And that's why when people say we need to burn it all down, I warn them. You know, reformation is a good thing, reforming, improving things. But if you want to just burn it all down and start from scratch, I think that's sort of a, throwing out the baby with the bathwater sort of fallacy. You believe there will be the beam me up, Scotty theory? Yeah, I mean, there's even some positive science suggesting that been some interesting research over the last few years about, being able to possibly transmit data, transmit subatomic particles from one place to another. But there's been a lot of controversy about what those experiments actually showed, and it may have more to do with quantum entanglement than it does with actually literally, transporting a piece of matter from one place to the other. But I think progress will take place on a lot of different levels. We'll be working, on AI and robotics and transportation technology, and we'll also be working on you know uh, you know neuroscience, and so it's sort of like we've always wanted to travel through time and space. It does look like it's theoretically possible, probably, to travel forward in space, theoretically, but it probably uh, is probably traveling back in time is probably inviolate. Probably laws of physics that prevent that from occurring, and usually entropy is the argument used against. So they refer to it as a, I always recommend Carroll. I forget his first name. Great physicist. He's written a great book on the arrow of time, which I highly recommend if you want to learn a bit more about what we think about the ontology of time, what it is, and whether we might be able to travel forward in time. There's also, I forget the other guy's name. See, this is where my memory fails me, but several scientists who are sort of on the cutting edge of this sort of theoretical physics. Um, I can't remember his name. Sean Carroll, I love. That's who I'm referring to, the arrow of time. Thank you, Elston Gunn. And then there's another scientist who's sort of considered sort of on the cutting edge of more as you must have set a limit, which you need to change for the super chat side brain. Much respect. Thank you again. You're so too kind. Entropy is, in the simplest of terms, it's simply the sort of tendency of the laws of physics to lead to decay as opposed to organization of matter. So in a closed system, you can offset entropy and have sort of matter clump together and cooperate and come to be ordered. But outside of a closed system, in an open system, entropy, which is, I believe, the second law of thermodynamics, is essentially the tendency of the universe and for matter to break from itself. So one of the hypotheses for how the universe will end is, I believe it's called sort of the cold death, the idea that as the universe continues to expand outward by the force of dark energy, that there may be a point in our distant future, maybe 10, 15, 20 billion years or something, that basically all of matter will essentially be shredded so that nothing, you know, if you want to use a metaphor, matter no longer cooperates. It no longer dances together in any sorts of interesting forms like planets and galaxies and organisms and animals and trees and plants, but it actually breaks down at the atomic level, and at some point in our distant future, the distance between subatomic particles might be so great that the universe is just a very cold and boring place with nothing happening and no interesting phenomena occurring because matter simply no longer can get together, so to speak, to form interesting structures and phenomena. William Wallace. Freedom. Yeah, artificial intelligence is creepy. A lot of people are very worried about it. They believe that we need to have sort of the ethics and the reasoning discussed in advance because a lot of the development in AI is occurring so fast that we might not have thought about the possible repercussions. And if we don't think through it and get cooperation in advance, it might just, fly the coop and get away from us. And I love the Boston Dynamics robotics; they're absolutely amazing. Is baby Jesus dark matter? I don't even know how to answer that question. No, dark matter is the opposite. Dark matter is what holds things together. Dark energy is what pushes things apart and is responsible for the increasing rate of expansion. Dark matter is when we look at the gravitational pull that we should expect from the available matter in a particular space, we notice that there seems to be too much gravity. And so the explanation for why that is that there must be other matter um, creating additional gravitational force, and we refer to that phenomenon as dark matter, some sort of matter that we're not yet aware of. No, quantum physics versus Newtonian physics is definitely not a wasted class. I have if any of you want it, if you want to learn more about the interpretations of quantum mechanics, there's a beautiful panel with Sean Carroll and Brian Greene and another guy again whose name evades me, but who's also a brilliant theoretical physicist and actual particle physicist. And they have like a 3-hour panel where they discuss the various mainstream interpretations of quantum mechanics. And I'd be more than happy to share it with you. It's sort of a must see for anyone interested in the prevailing interpretations of quantum mechanics. So they discuss the Copenhagen hypothesis and the many worlds hypothesis. I won't call them theories because they're not. I'm constantly trying to tell people what a theory and a hypothesis is, and then these scientists go off and use the word wrong, incorrectly, and call them theories. They're not theories, they're hypotheses. Are you planning on watching the launch of the Webb telescope? I mean, yes, probably. By the way, somebody referred to CERN. When I was in Geneva, CERN was about a 15-minute drive from me, and I never got to go. And my girlfriend at the time, my Swiss girlfriend at the time, was getting her master's degree in I believe it was particle physics. It was certainly physics. Oh, sorry, astrophysics. She was an astrophysicist. She is an astrophysicist, and she was doing her graduate work at CERN, and I was so jealous. Oh my goodness, the ability to go to CERN every day. I think it was right over the border. It was right outside of Geneva. Is that a hypothesis or is that a fact, AK? Thank you, Noel. Thank you for coming. I hope you got something out of it, found it interesting. Yeah, what's the null hypothesis? Well, the null hypothesis is that I don't believe that AK peed in his pants. My null hypothesis is that I don't accept that hypothesis. The null stands because I think he's making a joke. Schrodinger's urine? So it's what? Either urine or it's not urine? I think it would be Schrodinger's pee in your pants. So he either did. So basically, okay, so what we have is we have AK is in a box. He's asleep. And we sort of snuck in and put his hand in cold water. And we don't know if he peed in his bed or not until we open the box. At which point so before we open the box, he's both peed in his pants and not peed in his pants. And it's only when we open the box that we'll find out. And I don't want to open the box and find out, personally. Somebody else will have to take on that task. But I'm going with the null hypothesis that I don't believe AK just peed in his pants. Is the Big Bang theory or hypothesis? The Big Bang is theory, very well supported in experiment, testing, and data. The singularity, however, which is what we infer from the Big Bang theory in terms of going back before the Big Bang, is a hypothesis which we hit what's called the Planck barrier. When we look back in time, we can't go beyond a certain point. The Big Bang theory is simply that we know, based on the facts and the testing, that at some point in the universe's history, about 13.7 billion years ago, something happened which set off a process. That process was, you know, matter moving out from some sort of concentrated space, moving out in all directions, which over time has now formed the universe as we know it, based on changing laws of physics over time and the matter configuring and reconfiguring into different formations and more interesting phenomena, including ultimately biology. And what we don't know is what happened before the Big Bang, or even if the word before is coherent. So it's possible that time comes into being at the moment of the Big Bang. But we hit what's called the Planck barrier, which is basically just where our knowledge ends, and we can't see any further back into time. And what we've inferred, just by abductive reasoning, is that if we, just follow the logic, the universe is expanded outward from a hot, dense state, and so we just infer through abductive reasoning that it makes sense that if we were able to go back further in time, if that is even a coherent idea, that if that would have just become a hotter and denser and more localized, smaller universe, and the logical outcome of that is just sort of a dot of sort of infinite energy and mass that was essentially the origin of the universe, or what's called cosmogenesis. But we don't have a scientific explanation for cosmogenesis. We only have the singularity hypothesis at this point. So the Big Bang is theory, not hypothesis. It's the highest level of scientific knowledge that there is, like evolution or germ theory or a host of other things. Bye, P. Faith. P. Dot. P. Faith Walker. Thank you for coming. So, so we don't know what happened before the Big Bang, or even if that is the correct way of formulating the question. Yeah, that's May Hazel. That's a question which is usually referred to in the context of subjective experience and things like qualia. And my girlfriend's actually written a really good essay on that topic, which is on my website, and I would be more than happy to share it with you. Again, if you send me an email or just drop me a message somewhere, I will provide you with the link that addresses exactly your question on the subjective experience of color, often referred to in the context of qualia. Hi, Ryan. Hello, welcome. I've also done a lot of work on abiogenesis, a topic that I find fascinating, how emergent chemistry becomes biology. And one of the common misnomers is that evolution explains the origin of life, and that's also incorrect, just like people think Big Bang explains the origin of the universe. It doesn't. Sorry, let me say that again. Um, Cosmogenesis is the origin of the universe, and we do not have a scientific theory for cosmogenesis. We have a hypothesis, which is called the singularity. And then there's abiogenesis, which is the origin of life, and we are working on it and making great advances into understanding how the cell came to be, how DNA, the DNA molecule came to be, whether it came from a earlier um, more primitive cell and a more primitive DNA molecule, something like proto-RNA. There are a few different competing hypotheses. Good night, Annie. And abiogenesis is also a fascinating topic that I've written on a lot. But a lot of people believe that evolution explains abiogenesis, the origin of life, and that's wrong. Evolution explains how biology behaves after the cell has already come to be. Evolution does not explain the origin of life. That would be abiogenesis, or what's also called chemical evolution. And we're working on it, and we've made great advances. We've even been able to create synthetic biology, but we need a little bit of help from existing biology, so we're still not there. But we may in our lifetimes. I mean, we're never going to be able to find the actual way that life started because it's simply too distant in our past and all of the evidence is gone. But what we will be able to do is create life completely organically in a laboratory and show how life could have started. And once we show just from the basic building blocks of chemistry that we can create a self-replicating cell that can perform homeostasis, um, we will basically be able to say we know at least one of the ways that life could have evolved, whether or not we know the specific way. There may be more than one way. Um, and there are, some people that actually believe that maybe there is what is called um, uh, a shadow biosphere that may still be on this planet. So there's also domains of science like astrobiology where they go out into the universe and try to find the preconditions for life and obviously try to find life out in the universe. But there are even some scientists that believe that maybe there's what's called a shadow biosphere on our planet, that maybe there's an independent strain or branch of life that has nothing to do with our genome and nothing to do with our evolutionary path that may have evolved independently of the only life we know, and that maybe it's out there hiding from us somewhere in a cave or in a subterranean um, space or under the ocean somewhere in the deepest parts of the ocean. That if we ever find, for example, another organism which is not like the biology we know, that has a completely different structure or genome, we would have essentially a second data point. So the whole quest of finding life in the universe is finding a second data point. For the moment, we only have one data point. And if we find a second data point, whether here or elsewhere, then good night, Veritas. Thank you so much for coming. If we find a second data point of life, then we can just immediately know that if there's more than one life form in this universe, then life is probably ubiquitous in the universe and everywhere. Whether or not there's intelligent life is still an open question, but I think most scientists believe that it's just sort of so improbable um, that that there's anything unique about our little corner of the universe, that life could only have occurred once. Now, there could have been other life that went extinct a long time ago, There may be even reasons why intelligence is maybe not selected for from an evolutionary perspective, because maybe intelligence leads to self-annihilation or even depression, and it results in a dysfunctional animal. Um, so, we still have a long way to go. I have not been to the Maine Mineral and Gem Museum in Bethel, Maine. I have not even been to Maine, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we found DNA in meteorites, but we found amino acids, the building blocks of of life. Neuroplasticity is certainly a good thing. Wonderful topic. Yeah, what's going on with AK? Is he regressing in real time? Does he need to change his pants? Quantum tunneling is also fascinating. I did talk about quantum mechanics, but I would have to say that I would need to go refresh. I would need to go do some homework to remind myself of quantum tunneling. I know a bit of what quantum entanglement is, because don't ever confuse what I mean. I am not a physicist, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biologist. I'm a social scientist, but I've spent a lot of time as an autodidact to at least try to be able to represent sort of consensus science so that I can try to educate on science literacy. But I'm simply parroting what the best scientists say. This is not my area of expertise, and if a physicist was in the room, I would defer immediately to them because I simply don't have the qualifications. I just hope that I represent the science adequately, at least superficially. Yeah, my cat's always had a bit of I think it's like asthma, and I used to worry about it when he was young, but he's had it all his life, and he just has little phases where he hacks. He's a bit hacky. Thank you, Kibby. Thank you so much. Wish you a nice evening. And but then he's okay. I don't worry so much about it anymore. Yeah, I don't think it's hairballs. I think it's a sort of maybe light asthma or something. I usually sort of pick him up and just get him to sort of shake his body a little bit, try to free up the congestion, and then he's okay. There were a few times back in the day when I was definitely worried, but it's not very often, and sometimes it goes away for a while. I hope it's not whooping cough. I believe whooping cough is a virus, isn't it? Maybe he's allergic to me. Yeah, people are allergic to me sometimes. I can be annoying, and I like to talk about all this stuff, and it can result in putting people to sleep. So I hope I didn't put you to sleep. I mean, a couple people just left because they were. I'm hoping it's just time to go to bed, and it's not me boring them. I mean, that's a big topic, May. This evening, it's a Q&A, so I'm answering anything, but I'm very conscious in the space that I'm in that not everybody's going to share my interests, and that bringing intellectualism might not be very popular. So I'm trying to provide some critical thinking and some useful skills that I think everybody can appreciate and use. But at the same time, being cognizant that I don't want to overwhelm anyone or bore anyone, and hopefully try to make it entertaining and still bring some parody and a bit of humor. Thank you, Ryan. Very kind. I'm getting my sea legs a bit in this live stream stuff. The first night I was a bit manic. I wasn't very eloquent. The second night I felt a little bit too much of that, but I feel a little bit calmer and at ease this evening. I suppose it's just practice, trying to figure out how to use the software and change screens and look at chat and talk on complex topics is sort of a, rub your stomach and pat your belly sort of multitasking thing that, I'm not that good at. Maybe hopefully I get a little better at it. Thank you, Hope Rocks. Very kind of you. I certainly don't want to bore anyone. Yeah, I mean, maybe AK could sort of be one of those, like a mock, um, what do you call speaking with your hands? Sign language. He could be sort of, I could put him in the corner of my videos, and he could be like pretending to do do the sign language translation, but it could just be like comedy relief. He could just be sort of dancing around. Yeah, AK interpretive dance in the corner of the screen. Could sort of do hand signals and do silly things, and we could, he could distract people from my silliness, make everybody laugh. Thank you, Maureen. That's very kind of you. I do suffer from what's called imposter syndrome. I'm not alone, but I'm sort of always afraid to be exposed as a fraud. Always afraid that I'm ultimately very ignorant and I'm overestimating stuff that I think I know. The weather, like at my home, it's the tropics, so it's always summertime here. There's only a few cool days. I have a private beach access about 100 meters from my home, which I haven't been to enough. I mean, I moved here because I wanted the warm weather again, and I wanted the beach because I come from Los Angeles originally. So I'm a tropical island guy. We used to go to Hawaii every summer. Thank you, AK. And so I feel alive in warm weather. And after 17 years in cold weather, I just remember scratching at the glass for 7 months a year, waiting for the sun to come out and not have to put on 17 layers. And it was always like people, you know, wait their entire life, the entire year to maybe go on a tropical vacation for 2 weeks a year. And I thought, since I had bought a vacation home down in the tropics that I had never expected to come live in, I said, well, why not turn that on its head and live in paradise? And then if I want to go skiing or go into the cold and put on a jacket, because that's fun for a while, then maybe I take a vacation to the cooler weather. Why was the term bad actors used in your videos? Very good question. Well, first of all, I think people take that word as very strong, as if I'm saying someone's an asshole or a scumbag or a jerk off. Um, the word bad actor means something. It means somebody who's not doing a very good job of acting. So, from a theatrical perspective, you have good actors and you have bad actors. And it's just someone, in my humble opinion, who's not assuming the responsibility, doesn't have the competence or the ethics to perform a role, and that role is essentially um, true crime reporting and victim advocacy. And I think that it requires a certain level of competence, whether in investigative journalism or some background in law, some background in investigative ethics, and just some formal. I think it should be considered something like a profession. You wouldn't want someone to call themselves a doctor and get paid to be a doctor who doesn't have a medical license and who didn't go to medical school. So why should we feel the same way about people that are speculating about who killed somebody in the true crime space, especially when they have large audiences? So when I'm referring to people who are bad actors, I'm saying they're not acting according to what I think the role should be in this space. And I think we should be able to call them on it, just like bad acting in any other profession. and demand that they do their job better, especially if they're making money doing it. And when we see something like what Chris McDonough did, where he put three innocent families in mortal danger and completely showed a lack of respect for the uh, investigative ethics that he once would have had to follow as an actual cop, um, I'm pretty sure that that's in interests that have nothing to do with being an ex-cop, but rather in the interests of his new job, his new celebrity, and his new platform of self-promotion, and even sort of acquiring a certain guru status. And so I found what he was doing quite harmful and dangerous, and so I consider that bad acting. And that's not the same thing as saying somebody is necessarily a horrible, terrible person. I hope that answers your question. No, Webb Sluice was not a bad actor. I think that she was caught out. I think she had good reasons to believe she had on a credible expert, and I believe that she didn't catch what occurred, and it was not brought to her attention. And I believe that her behavior subsequent to learning about the mistake is exemplary and courageous, and a lot more than many of the other channels who seemingly either were indifferent or were not willing to risk saying something about it. So I consider her response exemplary, and I consider the mistake extremely forgivable. On the contrary, I don't qualify her as a bad actor. What I did criticize at the beginning was that anybody with a big platform needs to vet their guests, and ultimately they're responsible for what their guests do on their platform. So if I have somebody on my show ever, and they spread a misinformation or a dangerous rumor, and I don't know it, and I missed it, I expect to be. I want somebody to come tell me and allow me to correct the mistake and to acknowledge that a mistake was made. That's what I would expect. Yeah, May. That's. I mean, that's why I came here again, as I explained earlier. I mean, I thought it was really a serious sort of thing. This is not just oops. Potentially getting somebody killed is a bit more important than I'm sorry I forgot to say thank you. After you handed me your cheeseburger. There are different levels of mistakes, and then there's a pattern. It's not once, it's not twice, it's not even three times. He's lying to this day about the Michael Crow case because he knows that it was brought up after these issues, and then he's tried to obfuscate and sent out a bunch of apologists to try to defend it away and confuse people as to what actually happened. And they're doing a terrible job because anybody that has read the outcome knows the facts of the case. I'm pretty sure that you'll want to go with the Supreme Court and the Ninth Court of Appeals decision, and not some wannabe, late night shock jock radio host who likely has no formal background in law. I don't believe that that is a very bombastic claim that I'm making. I mean, I did nothing but represent what the ruling was. So I think what we'll do, I think we'll go another, 15 minutes, maybe half an hour. I mean, I started at quarter after, so I mean, we could go three. But if there's nothing else, um, we can also end it here. So I'll sort of let you decide. Would you talk to Mike? Would you ever talk to Michael Crow? Wow, that's an interesting question. Would you talk to Michael Crow if he ever reached out or saw your videos? What would you say to him? That's a really interesting question. Um, First off, I imagine that he will never have heard of me, and my videos on my small channel will never get the sort of exposure required for him to see it. I imagine if he did, hopefully he would be appreciative of my effort to sort of defend his honor in that case, if that's the right way to say it. But if he were to reach out to me, I imagine I would be, yes, interested to talk to him, but more as just a human being, not necessarily as an analyst or for content. I think I would have a lot of empathy for him, and have feeling of sort of sorrow that he went through that, and he actually had to spend 9 months in prison, and had been convinced of just horrible things, that his parents had abandoned him, and he actually convinced himself, they convinced him that he had done such an atrocious act, and the litigation went on for, I think, about I don't know, 13 years or more. So I can't imagine the consequences on his life and his experiences, and the sort of, I would imagine, sort of PTSD, the sort of psychological consequences that he must have to deal with. I don't know that could ever truly disappear or be reversed. So that's what I would say to him, I believe. Yeah, I wish that too, truth teller. I mean, I can't tell you that I'm very positive with the state of affairs in the world today, certainly not in America. At some point, I think I was a bit of a cynic. Um, then I think I became an optimist, surprisingly, for about 10, 15 years. And now I'm a pessimist in the short to medium term. I'm still an optimist long term, but I'm no longer an optimist in the short term. I'm definitely pessimistic on the near future, and I think I'm relatively pessimistic on the medium term. I think we might be sort of at the cusp of a generational level change. I think the cozy, stable world that we had come to know, um, may be coming to an end, and we might have a rather difficult stage ahead of us. I just hope that the worst of scenarios don't come to pass. So, can I get a bit of feedback from you? I really am still new to the format and to the software, and using some of these features, like you know noticing a comment in the chat room and then putting it up on screen, and then hopefully addressing it. Hopefully not too long. Hopefully not too short. Have I done an okay job managing this live stream from your perspective? Do I still seem quite rookie? Future topics, any agenda? Well, I brought up that I'm going to be talking to Tricia this Thursday about a possible piece of work, possibly a live stream, possibly even with Tricia. It's been an idea I've been wanting to work on. I have a lot of other ideas because, again, I have a massive database of content on SCTS. So I'll never, my problem is not a shortage of content. It's about sort of what I want to focus on. And I tend to be a bit spontaneous, like I get up one day and most of the videos I've made, I just sort of wake up in the morning and I have an idea and then I write up a script and get it done. I had, just so many ideas. Thank you, everyone. Very kind. Oh, for Christ's sake, AK, stop being so generous. Thank you. I love you, brother. So I don't have a shortage of plans. I just can't tell you what I'm going to do from one day to the next. I like to be spontaneous. I'm also working on a big script, which I'm actually thinking about even turning it into a screenplay. It's an idea for a big story, which I think could be very important in a contemporary context, even sort of a blockbuster style, sort of a dystopian novel idea that I've worked on, and I've run it by a few people that think it could be really something. And I've thought even about crowdsourcing, writing a book, or making a movie, or actually writing a script and seeing if I can get in contact with some of my friends. Most of my good friends from LA are good friends with J.J. Abrams, so I might actually know somebody who could sneak in a screenplay if I could actually sit down and write it. So I have been thinking about working on that. I even thought about maybe releasing it to you guys in small episodes, but I sort of want to keep it under my belt. I think it's a decent idea. I could be wrong, of course, and I tend to have ideas that never come to fruition. So we will see. You'll be doing a show on Barry Morphew. A couple of people have asked about Morphew, and because I'm not a true crime channel, I'm not actually very well versed in the cases. And like Barry Morphew is one I really only, as I've said before, I only really superficially know the details. I'm sort of not qualified. Like AK will know, just so much more than me, and probably most of the people in the room will know more than me. I feel competent that I could speak on something like the Lori Vallow case. I suppose at this point I could probably speak on the Summer Wells case. I could speak on the Brian Laundrie case. But besides that, my true crime vocabulary at a detailed level is probably less than yours. Of course, AK. Do you want to be like the villain, or do you want to be the what do you want? Which kind of role do you want? You want to be you can be like the dupe, that falls for it and then has the realization at the end of the movie, suddenly dawns on you that you've fallen for a, a plot, a ploy, a conspiracy, dare I say conspiracy, or you could be a villain. I always wanted to be on SNL. Well, I mean, I think I have a frustrated comedian in me. I think that's why I like doing the parody. I like to consider myself funny, but that's up to somebody else to determine. So yeah, Allie, let's do a comedy sketch. Back VP, thank you so much for your help. Thank you to all the mods. Comic relief, absolutely. Thank you, Truth Teller. Very kind of you. You won't follow the Chris McFish drama. Well, that's part of the problem, is that what's happened is I got so saturated from having to listen to multi-hour streams to sort of keep up, and I spent so much time doing that I really feel sort of saturated. I'm not sure I can listen. I mean, so many of these, my bad actors. I mean, like for example, the protesters that went to Tennessee. These people are they're dangerous, and they're definitely bad actors. So I think there may be, some necessary content about the Molly Golightly's of the world, more on the Tiffany Marie, and this JLR. He's a bad guy. Andrew Griffin, also a very bad and dangerous actor. I think these people need to be hit hard with some quality content, and I think from a lot of different angles. So I think that's still one. I sort of feel like Fish has been diminished. I think we actually had a bit of an impact. It doesn't mean he's going to change his ways, but I think we made a dent, and I think a lot of people are on to him. So maybe just enough people will pick up the torch and sort of keep on it. Not let him have free reign anymore. His credibility has been massively blemished. Um, but yeah, these other actors might, need to be taken on, with quality content, with really strong evidence and arguments, and on a comprehensive level. Yeah, Ryan. I mean, I don't want to give up because I don't think he's been diminished enough. It's just I don't know how much I have in me. Not to mention just, I have other projects that I'd like to work on. So, it's hard for me. I don't want to say I give up. Um, I just, I'd like some support on the sides. If I can take any credit for maybe helping get the ball rolling. I mean, I don't think I'm the first one. I don't give myself that much credit, but hopefully did bring sort of some big gun arguments and content to maybe just sort of buttress the case and get it out there a bit more, and maybe some other people can sort of sort of take the baton. Yeah, I'm definitely not afraid of any of these people. I'll sort of take the risk. I mean, I sort of expect the risk will still come, and the more we challenge people, their livelihoods, the greater the chance that they will fight back. Thank you, Ryan. Very kind. I hope I made a dent, at least. I hope I made you proud, AK. I mean, I interact with Nomadic. I like him. I think he's a good person. So I hope I did him proud. I hope Jamie feels the same way. It's a principle argument. The fact that there are humans, only makes me a bit more driven. But like for example, I would defend Chris McDonough if tomorrow I heard behind the scenes a bunch of people that were going to go after him in real life and literally, threaten his family or his life, or try to do something that doesn't live up to my standards of ethics. I mean, I just use ideas. That's all. I'm just words. But if somebody went after him, I mean, I would condemn it in no uncertain terms. Any of them, Josh, Doug, Molly. I'm not about harming people physically in life, in real life. I want to knock down bad arguments. I want to make them have to work harder to pay their bills. If they're going to pay bills by being deceitful and dishonest and dangerous, then, I want to use the means in a civil society to criticize that. It has nothing to do with whether I like them or dislike them as human beings. I believe their behavior is dangerous. I thought, John hinged, last night. I mean, I think he makes some really good arguments, and he has some very deep knowledge of the inner workings of the politics of YouTube. Uh, he made some really good arguments. I think it was last night about, the harm of people like Tiffany Marie and Andrew Griffin and Molly Golightly, and I mean, he's spot on. Good, sound, moral reasoning, good stuff. He has a very different approach than I do, but I think his moral reasoning is pretty good. Exactly, Maureen. I do not condone violence. I do not condone doxing. I do not condone going after people in real life, those sorts of intimidation tactics. I just want them to pay social consequences in public for bad arguments and deceit and harmful behavior. AR, he does. He has so much more knowledge of me, of the inner workings of YouTube politics. I think I have pretty good insight into social relations and human systems and the sorts of games that people play. But he knows so much more detail. I'm just a newbie. I have not seen his documentaries. I've only seen his, sort of true crime criticism channel. And if you want to know who Tiffany Marie is, and if you want to know who Molly Golightly is, I can't think of a better source. I've only scratched the surface. I haven't done a formal analysis and comprehensive set of arguments. I could, and I might. Yeah, I'm not going to lose any sleep, VP, if they cannibalize each other and turn on each other to such an extent that it ends up resulting in their demise. I'm not going to lose any sleep. If they go out and shoot each other, I'm not going to, experience Schadenfreude. But, I wouldn't be surprised. I've said for a long time, it's not if, it's when there are going to be consequences. So somebody's going to get killed, possibly an innocent person who's been insinuated from an irresponsible channel, and then a big cult of personality goes after them in real life. But I'm actually more worried about mental illness. I'm more worried about people committing suicide from the stress and anxiety and bullying and pressure. I'm more worried about that. How do you stop them? Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I don't think you can stop them. I think you can just set actions in motion that can possibly cause them to implode or make really serious mistakes, possibly even criminal mistakes. Hopefully discredit them to such an extent that they either have to move to a different space and start over, or you at least at best stop their growth. Well, yeah, inadvertently becoming a victim advocate. As a scientific skeptic, I'm a consumer advocate, and I'm a humanist, and I teach moral philosophy. So just by extension, I'm already and have always been a victim advocate. I began my career as a human rights consultant at the United Nations, so I have a great concern for human well-being and for trying to improve it on this planet, and am on board with any prescriptions for how to be more effective at it. Welcome back, Ozzy. Thank you again for helping. Hi, John John QQ. John QQ. I like that. Very clever. John QQ. So I think we're drawing to an end here. John HQ, you're coming. John QQ. It's hard for me to say. I think we're coming closer to a close. A few more minutes, but please feel free to watch the replay. We talked about all sorts of really interesting things, or at least I hope to you guys they were interesting. I tried to answer all the questions I could. Has Josh tried to debate you again, Brain, or did he finally see the light? I haven't followed. I can't watch them really anymore. I don't really care. I'm whatever the scientific. I think he's still a bit butthurt over the thing I've heard, and I hate to use that term, but internet lingo. Um, I whatever, I'm the, the septic skeptic or the scientific defect or whatever, just sort of some petty insulting names. I called him just Josh, and it's not too bad. I can live with the scientific defect or the septic skeptic. It is funny though when I get wind of people communicating with other people saying that I'm somehow involved in some big plot behind the scenes, and I'm paid off by somebody to lie, or I'm somehow even um, implicated in some sort of criminal activity, and it's just a question of time before somebody's coming to get me, and we're all going to go down. And I just get a kick out of that. I mean, it's so absurd. More often than not, they're referring to things that I don't know anything about. I've never even heard of some of the people being referred to that I'm uh, you know assumed to be somehow in cahoots with. That's all funny, but yeah, no, I sort of don't really have any interest. I mean, maybe John. I think the weak link in the apologists camp. I'll pay Josh a compliment. I think the weak link in the apologist camp, the bad actors that sort of implicitly, uh, are on the side of Chris McDonough. I think Josh is the weak link, and I hope that Josh sort of wakes up one day and thinks about it, and goes on his own, and leaves that space, because I think he's actually, my personal opinion is that he's the least what's the word, malicious. I think, I'd like to believe he's more duped than malicious. I could be wrong. Right, the crisis actor skeptic. Right. AK, I agree. I think your arrow is correct. I am less than. You are more entertaining. I mean, that's the other way of looking at this, is that if we disrupt the clan, so to speak, the Bad Actors Guild, um, maybe we can just at least split up the alliance, you know, uh, increase the speed of the cannibalism in the group, so that they just lose cohesiveness and sort of can't act in concert. Sort of like how the police try to break up gangs and mafia groups and things like that. Oh, I'm not gonna touch that one. TPT, how is that relevant to the conversation? Yeah, no, I sorry, I agree with that statement. Yeah, we shall see, Ryan. We shall see with time. A lot of people, Ryan, are suggesting that the cannibalism might be by design to create more chaos, thus more sensationalism, thus being in their benefit for content and views and all that. My skepticism sort of radar goes off, assuming that they could be that clever and they could pull that sort of acting off, but that doesn't mean that that's not what's happening. So I really would reserve judgment on whether or not any of these conflicts are staged. It's possible. Thank you, Truth Teller. Very kind. Drama sells indeed. I mean, that's one of the problems with this space is that it's so obvious that substantive, rational, reasonable, thoughtful, careful, evidence-based, and well thought through presentation of very delicate topics like true crime and especially open cases just doesn't satisfy the human itch for entertainment and drama and storytelling. So, you sort of feel like you're in the difficult position where it's like, if you can't beat them, join them. Do you just then have to rhetorically sort of compete and understand that you need to make the content somehow so entertaining, lots of bells and whistles, interjecting some humor and maybe some fancy graphics and, very creative storytelling, somehow interjecting drama and still treating the cases um, with the respect they deserve? I mean, I don't know how you do that. You'd have to be very creative, very rhetorically capable to provide the same level of entertainment and drama to people while still covering these cases with the care that they deserve. That's not easy. Yeah, rock solid. I mean, I felt like I gave him too much of the benefit of the doubt. I actually went out of my way to try to warn him because I saw it coming. But then after I had seen his behavior, I mean, I felt like I had just simply misjudged him. Um, and then I think there really is just a lot of opportunism involved in his behavior. As I said, I still don't think he's as malicious, but I'm not sure the distinction is really very important. He was in the. I see Doug and Josh in the room of John Hinged, and they're like, they're agreeing with him, and I'm watching, going, you are the same people. You are part of the same clan. You guys are doing the same thing. You are all on the side of Chris McDonough's core arguments. So seeing Doug and Josh in the in John's chat room praising him when he's going after Molly Golightly and Tiffany and AB, I mean, it's the height of irony. It's sort of surreal. It was odd, AR. It's just ironic, whatever, lack of self-awareness or dishonesty, I don't know what it is. Okay, I think we're going to wrap this up. I might take one more question if anybody has any serious question. Otherwise, I think it might just be time to bid you all adieu. So yeah, I think we'll do that. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I hope I answered all of your questions. Or I'm sure I missed a lot, and I apologize for any questions that I missed. I hope I managed the live stream. I'm getting a little bit better. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much to all of the mods who moderated and kept the chat really positive and supportive, and just it was a really nice tone. Thank you so much, Polly. I really appreciated the tone and the quality of the argument. The quality of the questions was just brilliant. Thank you so much. Good night, Lynn. Good night, Gray Mist. Again, any names I've missed. Cheers from Germany. Guten Abend. Bonne soirée. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, John. QQ. Ones. Oh, thank you. And ones back. Thank you, VP, so much for modding. Thank you, Hope Rocks. Good night to you as well. Rock solid. Thank you. And any names I missed, I apologize. Thank you, Kathy. Very kind. I'm not worthy. Thank you, Beach Girl. Adios, AR. Christy. And on that note, jusqu'à notre prochaine conversation, mes copains, bonne soirée à toutes et à tous, et à bientôt. Good night, everyone.